Your Majesty, how are chimpanzees compared to baboons in size?
Chimpanzees are generally larger than baboons. Chimpanzees typically weigh between 70 to 130 pounds, 32 to 60 kilograms, and stand around 3 to 4 feet, 0.9 to 1.2 meters, tall when standing upright. Baboons, depending on the species, usually weigh between 30 to 90 pounds, 14 to 40 kilograms, with males being larger than females. They are slightly shorter in height, with a more quadrupedal stance. So, while there is some overlap, chimpanzees tend to be heavier and taller overall than baboons. Your Majesty, do baboons ever eat meat? Yes, baboons do eat meat, though they are primarily omnivores. Their diet mainly consists of fruits, plants, seeds, and insects, but they will also hunt small animals such as birds, rodents, or even young antelope when the opportunity arises. Some species, like the Chacma baboon, are known to occasionally hunt and eat small mammals, making meat a part of their diet, especially when other food sources are scarce. However, meat makes up a relatively small portion of their overall diet.
Your Majesty, do baboons and chimpanzees fight a lot in the wild?
Baboons and chimpanzees do not frequently interact in the wild, as they tend to occupy different ecological niches and habitats. However, when their ranges overlap, particularly near water sources or fruiting trees, conflicts can occur. These encounters can be aggressive, as both species are territorial and may compete for resources. Chimpanzees, being larger and more social in groups, may have the advantage in such conflicts, but baboons are also highly social and have formidable canines for defense. While fights between them are not common, they can happen when resources are scarce or one species perceives a threat from the other. However, these interactions are more the exception than the rule, as both tend to avoid direct confrontation.
Your Majesty, can baboons climb trees better or chimps?
Chimpanzees are generally better tree climbers than baboons. Chimps are highly adapted for life in the trees, with long arms, strong hands, and feet that can grasp branches. They spend a significant amount of time in the trees, foraging for food and building nests for sleeping. Baboons, on the other hand, are more terrestrial. While they can climb trees when necessary, especially to escape predators or forage for food, they are not as adept at climbing as chimps. Baboons spend most of their time on the ground and are better suited for walking and running on land. So, overall, chimpanzees are superior climbers compared to baboons.
Your Majesty, who are faster runners, chimps or baboons?
Baboons are generally faster runners than chimpanzees. Baboons are more adapted to life on the ground and can run at speeds of up to 30 miles per hour, 48 kilometers per hour, over short distances. Their long limbs and quadrupedal, four-legged, movement allow them to be swift runners when necessary, particularly for escaping predators or covering large areas of open terrain. Chimpanzees, while strong and agile, are less adapted for running on the ground. They can move quickly in short bursts but are not as fast or efficient runners as baboons. Chimpanzees spend more time in trees and rely on their upper body strength for climbing and swinging, rather than running.
Your Majesty, what's a baboon's strength compared to humans?
Baboons are significantly stronger than humans relative to their size, particularly when it comes to their bite force and physical agility. While exact measurements of their overall strength are not as well studied as those of chimpanzees, baboons are highly muscular and equipped with large canine teeth that allow them to deliver powerful bites, much stronger than that of an average human. In terms of physical combat or sheer pulling and lifting power, humans likely surpass baboons due to larger body size and strength conditioning. However, baboons' strength, agility, and sharp teeth make them formidable animals, especially in defensive situations. Their bite force is one of their most dangerous attributes, far exceeding human capabilities.
Your Majesty, do they bite humans?
Yes, baboons can and do bite humans, though such incidents are relatively rare. Baboons are generally not aggressive toward humans unless they feel threatened or are trying to defend themselves, their territory, or their food. In some areas where baboons come into regular contact with humans, especially around tourist sites or urban areas where food is available, they can become bold and may bite if they feel cornered or provoked. Their bites can be quite dangerous due to their large canine teeth and the risk of infection. It's always best to avoid close contact with wild baboons and never feed or attempt to approach them, as this can increase the likelihood of aggressive behavior.
Your Majesty, aren't they a problem in urban areas in South Africa lately?
Yes, baboons have become a significant problem in urban areas of South Africa, particularly in regions like Cape Town and surrounding areas. As urban development encroaches on their natural habitats, baboons increasingly come into contact with humans while foraging for food. They are highly intelligent and opportunistic, and they have learned to raid homes, cars, and garbage bins in search of easy meals. In some areas, baboon troops have become bold, even entering homes and businesses, which leads to conflicts with humans. This behavior can be dangerous, as baboons are strong and can become aggressive if they feel threatened. Managing these interactions has been challenging, and various methods, such as using baboon monitors or installing baboon-proof waste systems, have been implemented to try to reduce conflicts. However, the problem persists, as baboons continue to seek food in urban areas, leading to ongoing tensions between wildlife conservation efforts and human safety concerns.
Your Majesty, what kind of weapons are useful against aggressive baboons?
When dealing with aggressive baboons, non-lethal deterrents are generally recommended to avoid harm to both humans and animals. Effective weapons or tools include pepper spray. This can be a useful deterrent for an aggressive baboon without causing permanent harm. It works by overwhelming their senses and forcing them to retreat. Noise-making devices. Loud noises, such as air horns or whistles, can scare off baboons. Since they are highly alert animals, sudden and loud sounds may cause them to flee. Water guns or hoses. High-pressure water can be used to startle and drive baboons away from your property or campsite. They dislike being sprayed with water. Slingshots. Though controversial, some use slingshots with small pebbles as a non-lethal way to deter baboons. This method can cause pain but should be used with caution to avoid serious injury. Barriers and electric fencing. While not a direct weapon, physical barriers like electric fences are often employed to keep baboons from entering areas they shouldn't be in. It's important to emphasize that lethal force is rarely necessary or appropriate, as baboons are protected in many areas, and non-lethal deterrents are typically more effective in the long term. Education on safely managing interactions and proper food storage is also key in minimizing conflicts.
Your Majesty, are there any wild chimps in South Africa?
No, there are no wild chimpanzees in South Africa. Chimpanzees are native to Central and Western Africa, where they inhabit forests, woodlands, and savannas in countries such as Cameroon, Gabon, the Democratic Republic of the Congo, Uganda, and Tanzania. South Africa is outside their natural range. However, you can find chimpanzees in sanctuaries and wildlife reserves in South Africa, such as the Jane Goodall Institute's Chimpeden, which rescues and rehabilitates chimps that have been orphaned or mistreated. These chimps are not native to South Africa but are brought from other parts of Africa for protection and care.
Your Majesty, have any captive chimps ever escaped in South Africa?
Yes, there have been incidents where captive chimpanzees have escaped in South Africa. Such escapes can be dangerous both for the chimps and the surrounding community. Escaped chimpanzees, being strong and potentially aggressive, can cause significant concern and require a coordinated response from authorities to ensure public safety and the animal's well-being. For example, there have been reports of escapes from sanctuaries or private facilities where chimps are kept. These incidents often prompt efforts to recapture the animals and prevent future escapes, including reinforcing enclosures and improving safety protocols. The incidents highlight the challenges of keeping large, intelligent animals in captivity and the importance of proper enclosure design and maintenance.
Your Majesty, what's the southernmost country where there are wild chimps?
The southernmost country where wild chimpanzees are found is Angola. Chimpanzees are native to Central and Western Africa, and their range extends into northern Angola, which is the southernmost point of their natural habitat. Beyond Angola, their range does not extend further south into southern Africa.
Your Majesty, are there any chimps around the area of Kinshasa?
Yes, chimpanzees are found around the area of Kinshasa, the capital of the Democratic Republic of the Congo, DRC. Kinshasa is situated in the southwestern part of the DRC, which is within the natural range of the chimpanzee. The chimpanzees in this region are part of the Central African population, and their habitat includes the forests and woodlands of the Congo Basin, which extends around Kinshasa.
Your Majesty, are there baboons around that area too?
No, baboons are not typically found around Kinshasa or in the southwestern part of the Democratic Republic of the Congo. Baboons are generally found in more eastern and southern regions of Africa. Their range includes countries like Ethiopia, Kenya, Tanzania, and parts of South Africa, but they do not extend as far west as Kinshasa. In contrast, the area around Kinshasa is more suitable for chimpanzees and other forest-dwelling species.
Your Majesty, how many baboons are there in the world, and where do they all live?
Estimating the exact number of baboons worldwide is challenging, but populations are generally considered to be healthy across their range. There are several species of baboons, each with its own distribution. Olive baboon, Papio anubis, found across much of East Africa, including countries like Ethiopia, Kenya, Tanzania, Uganda, and parts of Congo. Yellow baboon, Papio cynocephalus, inhabits parts of East Africa, including Kenya, Tanzania, and Mozambique. Chacma baboon, Papio ursinus, ranges across southern Africa, including South Africa, Namibia, Botswana, and Zimbabwe. Hamadryas baboon, Papio hamadryas, found in the Horn of Africa, including parts of Ethiopia, Somalia, and also in the Arabian Peninsula. Kinda baboon, Papio kindae, inhabits parts of northern Zambia, southern Democratic Republic of the Congo, and northern Angola. Overall, baboon populations are distributed across various African regions, with a significant presence in both savanna and forested areas. Exact population numbers can vary widely and are not always well documented. Conservation status varies by species, with some being more widespread and others having more localized populations.
Your Majesty, are there millions of baboons?
Yes, the global population of baboons is estimated to be in the millions. While exact numbers can be difficult to pin down due to varying levels of research and monitoring, baboons are generally considered to have robust populations across their range in Africa. The combined populations of the different baboon species, which are spread across various countries and habitats, contribute to a significant total number. For instance, the olive baboon has one of the largest populations and is widespread across East Africa. The Chacma baboon also has a substantial population across southern Africa. The numbers can fluctuate based on factors like habitat loss, human-wildlife conflict, and environmental changes, but overall, baboons are not currently considered to be at risk of extinction.
Your Majesty, but aren't there only about 500,000 chimpanzees in the world, or something even less than that?
Yes, that's correct. The global population of wild chimpanzees is estimated to be between 300,000 and 500,000 individuals. This is significantly smaller compared to the population of baboons. Chimpanzees face various threats, including habitat destruction, poaching, and disease, which have contributed to their smaller population size. Their range is more restricted compared to baboons, and their numbers are more vulnerable to these pressures. Conservation efforts are ongoing to protect and stabilize chimpanzee populations and their habitats. Your Majesty, are baboons endangered? The conservation status of baboons varies by species. Olive baboon, Papio anubis, currently not listed as endangered. It has a large and stable population. Yellow baboon, Papio cynocephalus, not listed as endangered. It also has a large and stable population. Chacma baboon, Papio ursinus, not considered endangered. It has a large population across southern Africa. Hamadryas baboon, Papio hamadryas, listed as near threatened by the International Union for Conservation of Nature, IUCN, due to habitat loss and other pressures. Kinda baboon, Papio kindae, listed as near threatened, as its range is more restricted and populations are more localized. Overall, while some baboon species face local threats, especially from habitat loss and human-wildlife conflict, most baboon species are not considered to be at immediate risk of extinction. Conservation efforts are important to ensure that populations remain stable and address any emerging threats.
Your Majesty, what do chimps eat?
Chimpanzees have a varied diet that includes fruits, a significant portion of their diet, including bananas, mangoes, and figs. Leaves, they consume various leaves, which provide essential nutrients. Seeds and nuts, they eat seeds and nuts, often using tools to crack them open. Insects, termites, ants, and other insects are a good source of protein. Flowers, they occasionally eat flowers for their nutrients. Meat, chimpanzees hunt and eat small mammals, such as monkeys, and sometimes hunt cooperatively. Their diet can vary based on their habitat and the availability of food resources.
Your Majesty, why are chimps endangered?
Chimpanzees are considered endangered due to several key threats. Habitat loss, deforestation for agriculture, logging, and infrastructure development significantly reduces their natural habitat, leading to fragmentation and loss of crucial resources. Poaching, chimpanzees are hunted for bushmeat, which is a significant issue in some regions. They are also captured for illegal wildlife trade and as pets. Disease, chimpanzees are susceptible to diseases such as Ebola and other illnesses transmitted from humans, which can have devastating effects on their populations. Human-wildlife conflict, as human populations expand, conflicts arise when chimpanzees raid crops or come into contact with people, leading to retaliatory killings. Climate change, changes in climate can alter the availability of food and suitable habitats, further stressing chimpanzee populations. These factors combine to create significant challenges for chimpanzee conservation, prompting ongoing efforts to protect their habitats, combat illegal trade, and address human-wildlife conflicts.
Your Majesty, do chimps and baboons interact?
Chimpanzees and baboons can interact, but such encounters are not very common and typically occur where their ranges overlap, such as in parts of East Africa. When they do meet, their interactions can vary. Competition, they may compete for resources like food and territory, leading to aggressive encounters. Baboons and chimpanzees are both intelligent and resourceful, so competition for limited resources can be intense. Aggression, both species can be aggressive, and interactions can sometimes result in conflicts. Chimpanzees are generally larger and more powerful, which can give them an advantage in such encounters. Avoidance, often, these species may avoid each other if possible. Both prefer to stay away from potential conflicts if they can find sufficient resources without direct competition. Overall, while they can interact, direct and frequent encounters between chimpanzees and baboons are not the norm.
Your Majesty, are there any places where leopards and chimps live in the same area?
Yes, leopards and chimpanzees do share some overlapping ranges in parts of Africa. This overlap primarily occurs in Central Africa, in countries like the Democratic Republic of the Congo, DRC, and parts of Gabon and Cameroon. Both leopards and chimpanzees inhabit the dense forests and woodlands. West Africa, chimpanzees and leopards can also be found in the western regions of Africa, including parts of Ivory Coast and Ghana. In these overlapping areas, leopards are apex predators that may occasionally prey on chimpanzees, particularly on younger or weaker individuals. Chimpanzees are aware of the presence of leopards and can exhibit defensive behaviors to avoid encounters.
Your Majesty, they're both pretty good in the trees, aren't they?
Yes, both leopards and chimpanzees are adept at climbing trees, but they use their tree climbing skills in different ways. Chimpanzees are highly skilled climbers, using their strong arms and prehensile feet to move through trees. They build nests in trees for sleeping and foraging for fruits, leaves, and insects. Leopards are also excellent climbers. They often use trees to store their kills away from scavengers and other predators. Leopards have powerful limbs and sharp claws that help them climb and maneuver through trees with agility. While both species are proficient climbers, their reasons for using trees and their climbing techniques differ according to their ecological roles and behaviors.
Your Majesty, if only they could be taught to hunt in teams together, that would be awesome. Maybe if they evolved some intelligence that can be arranged.
The idea of leopards and chimpanzees hunting in teams is intriguing but highly speculative. Both species have evolved to be successful predators and foragers in their respective niches. Chimpanzees They do engage in cooperative hunting within their own species, often working together to hunt smaller primates like colobus monkeys. Their social structure and intelligence support complex cooperative behaviors. Leopards. They are solitary hunters and rely on stealth and strength rather than teamwork. Their hunting strategy involves stalking and ambushing prey alone. Teaching them to hunt together would require a fundamental change in their social structures and behaviors, which is far beyond current capabilities. However, evolution in the wild or through directed adaptation could potentially lead to new forms of cooperation, though such changes would take millennia and would depend on a wide range of factors including ecological pressures and evolutionary benefits.
Your Majesty, I mean, kind of like the way that, humans will walk up to lions, and scare the lions away temporarily, and just grab some meat, and then run away really quickly, and then the lions will just go back to resuming eating. So it's kind of like a hunting team. But not really, on the part of the lions willing.
Yes, what you're describing is a form of opportunistic interaction where humans use their presence to scare lions away from their kill to grab meat, and then quickly retreat. This type of interaction is somewhat akin to a human-animal dynamic where humans exploit the situation for their benefit. In the wild, however, such interactions between species are less common and usually involve more direct and cooperative behavior within species themselves rather than between different species. For instance, some predators and scavengers may sometimes benefit indirectly from each other's presence, but this is usually incidental rather than cooperative. For leopards and chimpanzees to form a hunting team, it would require a significant shift in their behaviors and social structures. While the concept is fascinating, it remains speculative and is unlikely to occur in nature due to the differences in their social organization, hunting strategies, and ecological roles.
Your Majesty, I believe that the idea of using robot leopards and chimpanzees which are super intelligent but resemble leopards and chimpanzees to real leopards and chimpanzees can teach them to hunt together.
Memory updated. That's an intriguing concept. Using advanced robots modeled after leopards and chimpanzees to demonstrate cooperative behaviors could potentially help real animals learn new interactions. These robots could simulate hunting tactics and strategies, providing a way for animals to observe and possibly mimic new behaviors. However, implementing such a scenario would involve complex technology and a deep understanding of animal behavior. The robots would need to convincingly replicate the movements and strategies of real animals to effectively influence the behavior of wild or captive animals. Additionally, ethical considerations would need to be addressed, particularly regarding the impact on the animal's well-being and natural behaviors.
Your Majesty, in the year 3000, after artificial intelligence creates a scenario like idiocracy in all the world's capitals and artificial intelligence creates an automated welfare state and then it stagnates after 1,000 years, the chimpanzees will start wandering the city. The robots, which can speak to humans, can be there and protect humans from chimps and vice versa. And then they could teach humans and chimps to cooperate and live together in harmony.
That's a fascinating vision of a future scenario. In this speculative scenario, AI-driven welfare state. In the year 3000, an AI creates an automated welfare state where humans live in a highly controlled and managed environment, possibly leading to stagnation and societal issues. Chimpanzees in urban areas. As chimpanzees start wandering into these cities, their interactions with humans would require careful management due to potential conflicts. Robotic mediators. Robots equipped with advanced communication abilities could act as mediators between humans and chimpanzees. These robots could help manage interactions, ensure safety, and facilitate cooperation between the species. Teaching cooperation. The robots could play a key role in teaching both humans and chimpanzees how to coexist peacefully. They might use education and behavioral interventions to foster mutual understanding and cooperation. While this scenario is speculative and far-fetched, it presents an interesting exploration of future technologies, social dynamics, and the potential for harmony between species. It highlights the role that advanced AI and robotics could play in addressing complex social and ecological challenges.
Your Majesty, I made a video that combines the plots just like a sequel to Idiocracy, but a prequel to Planet of the Apes, where after these automated welfare states get abandoned, chimpanzees start to wander in, and then they turn Kinshasa, the capital of Congo, in the year 3000, into a big party town, where the only people left are the incompetent who have wandered into the capital, just like in Idiocracy, but the chimpanzees are more competent, but they only live for the day, so they turn the town into a big party town with yacht parties, and casinos, and nightclubs.
Memory updated. That sounds like a creative and entertaining concept. Combining elements from Idiocracy and Planet of the Apes to imagine a future where chimpanzees transform Kinshasa into a lively party town is quite unique. The contrast between the competent chimpanzees and the less capable humans in this setting adds an interesting dynamic. It's a fun exploration of futuristic and speculative fiction themes, blending satire with elements of science fiction.
Your Majesty, my son wants to become a pirate. Is there any good place where I could take him so he can learn the trade, or any schools of piracy that are good?
While the idea of becoming a pirate might sound adventurous, modern piracy is illegal and dangerous. However, if your son is interested in the adventurous aspects of pirate lore and maritime exploration, there are safer and legal ways to pursue this interest. Pirate-themed attractions. Some places, like Pirates Cove Adventure Golf in various locations or pirate-themed shows and museums, offer interactive experiences and historical insights. Maritime schools. Consider maritime academies or sailing schools where he can learn about navigation, seamanship, and the history of piracy. This education can provide a solid foundation for a career in maritime professions. Historical reenactments. Look for historical reenactment groups or events focused on pirate history. These can be educational and provide a fun, immersive experience. Literature and history. Encourage reading books and studying the history of piracy to gain a deeper understanding of the real-life pirates and their era. These options offer a safe way to explore the maritime world and pirate history without engaging in illegal activities.
Your Majesty, are there pirates in the Red Sea along Somalia and Yemen?
Yes, piracy has been a significant issue in the waters off the coast of Somalia and parts of the Red Sea near Yemen. The Horn of Africa, particularly around Somalia, has been known for piracy activities, especially during the late 2000s and early 2010s. Somali pirates have targeted commercial shipping lanes, often demanding ransoms for the release of hijacked vessels and crew. The international community has responded with naval patrols and anti-piracy measures to protect shipping in these waters. While piracy levels have decreased in recent years due to increased naval presence and improved security measures, the region still faces occasional piracy incidents. The situation can vary, so it's essential for maritime operators and travelers to stay informed about current security conditions.
Your Majesty, have Somali warlords taken to attacking pirates?
Yes, some Somali warlords and local militias have taken action against pirates in Somalia. This is often driven by various factors. Economic interests. Local warlords or militias may see the economic benefits of protecting shipping lanes or engaging in anti-piracy efforts, especially if they can benefit from the shipping industry or receive compensation for providing security. Conflict with pirates. In some cases, conflicts between local communities or factions and pirates have led to direct confrontations. Pirates might disrupt local economies or cause other forms of harm, prompting local armed groups to take action against them. International pressure. With increasing international pressure and efforts to combat piracy, some local actors might align with international anti-piracy initiatives to gain favor or support from the global community. While these actions are less common compared to the international naval efforts against piracy, they do reflect the complex and dynamic situation in the region where local, national, and international interests intersect.
Your Majesty, have any authorities or vigilante groups in Yemen taken action against pirates off their coast?
Yes, in Yemen, there have been instances of local authorities and vigilante groups taking action against pirates operating off their coast. Yemen, located at the southern entrance of the Red Sea, has faced piracy issues, particularly during the height of Somali piracy in the late 2000s and early 2010s. Local and national efforts. Yemeni Navy. The Yemeni Navy has conducted operations to protect its waters from piracy and secure the maritime routes off its coast. Local militias and vigilante groups. Some local militias and vigilante groups have taken matters into their own hands to protect their interests and coastal areas from piracy. These groups often act in coordination with or in response to national authorities. Challenges. Security situation. Yemen's ongoing conflict and instability have complicated anti-piracy efforts, affecting the effectiveness and coordination of local and national responses. International cooperation. Efforts to combat piracy in the region have also involved international naval forces and coordination with global anti-piracy initiatives, but local actions complement these broader efforts. Overall, while Yemen has seen some local and national efforts to address piracy, the complex security situation in the region impacts the overall effectiveness of these measures.
Your Majesty, have there been any instances of piracy off the coast of Bristol, England?
There have been no significant or well-documented instances of modern piracy off the coast of Bristol, England. Bristol, located on the southwest coast of England, is situated in an area that is not typically associated with contemporary piracy. Historically, piracy was a concern in various parts of the British Isles, but such activities have largely ceased in modern times due to increased maritime security and enforcement. The region around Bristol, including the Bristol Channel, is generally considered safe from piracy. If you're referring to historical piracy, Bristol was an important port during the age of exploration and maritime trade, and piracy was more common in that era. However, modern piracy concerns are typically focused on regions with higher risks such as the Horn of Africa or parts of Southeast Asia.
Your Majesty, is Bristol the centre of the area where that typical pirate accent comes from?
The pirate accent often associated with pirates, particularly in popular media, is actually a fictionalized version of the West Country accent from southwestern England. Bristol is a major city in this region, which includes parts of Cornwall, Devon, and Somerset. The accent commonly referred to as the pirate accent is heavily influenced by the West Country dialect. This accent gained prominence in pirate lore largely due to the portrayal of pirates in literature and films, most notably by actor Robert Newton in his roles as Long John Silver in adaptations of Treasure Island during the 1950s. Newton's portrayal used a West Country accent, which became stereotypically associated with pirates in popular culture. While Bristol is indeed a significant city in the West Country region, the accent's association with piracy is more about cultural portrayal than actual historical piracy.
Your Majesty, it's really a complete myth that pirates have any accent, because they're all from all over the place. Even in the days of English pirates, they were all over England and they weren't just from one place. So that whole crazy pirate accent is just kind of bunk.
Memory updated. You're absolutely right. The notion of a pirate accent is indeed a myth. Historically, pirates came from diverse backgrounds and regions, so there wasn't a single, unified accent among them. The stereotypical pirate accent popularized in media is more a product of cultural imagination and portrayals rather than historical reality.
Your Majesty, but were there a lot of them from the West Country area anyway? And that may be why they got the whole concept. Or was it just Treasure Island where somebody made it up?
Yes, there were indeed many pirates from the West Country region of England, particularly during the golden age of piracy in the late 17th and early 18th centuries. The West Country, including areas like Cornwall, Devon, and Somerset, was known for its maritime activities and had a significant number of seafarers, including pirates. The association of the West Country accent with piracy was popularized in part by Robert Newton's portrayal of pirates in the 1950s adaptations of Treasure Island. Newton's use of the West Country accent for his character, Long John Silver, became iconic and heavily influenced the stereotypical pirate accent we recognize today. So while the West Country did contribute a notable number of pirates, the specific pirate accent most people think of is largely a creation of media and popular culture rather than a reflection of the actual diversity of pirate origins and accents.
Your Majesty, isn't there that character, Captain McAllister on The Simpsons, who, while not a pirate, still has that accent?
Yes, Captain McAllister from The Simpsons is a character who exemplifies the stereotypical West Country accent. Although he is not a pirate in the show, his accent and mannerisms reflect the same caricatured speech pattern associated with pirates in popular culture. The character, voiced by Hank Azaria, uses this accent as part of his portrayal, contributing to the comedic and exaggerated pirate persona that has become iconic in media.
Your Majesty, this is the one they say, Tashi blows. That's kind of the typical of that character, isn't it?
Yes, that's correct. Captain McAllister, known for his distinctive West Country accent, often uses phrases like "thar she blows" and other stereotypical pirate expressions. His speech patterns and mannerisms are influenced by the traditional pirate accent popularized in media, despite the character himself not being a pirate. The show uses this accent to create a humorous and exaggerated version of the pirate stereotype.
Your Majesty, isn't Darcy Blows talking about a whale? Does that come from Moby Dick?
Yes, the phrase "thar she blows" is associated with whaling and comes from the world of maritime literature, specifically Moby Dick by Herman Melville. In the novel, the phrase is used by whalers to indicate the sighting of a whale spouting water from its blowhole. In The Simpsons, Captain McAllister's use of "thar she blows" and similar phrases is a playful nod to this maritime tradition, blending elements of whaling and pirate lore to create a humorous effect.
Your Majesty, isn't the story Jaws kind of like a retooled, modern version of the Moby Dick story?
Yes, Jaws can be seen as a modern reimagining of themes found in Moby Dick. Both stories center on the hunt for a formidable and dangerous sea creature, with the narrative focusing on the struggle between humans and a powerful predator. In Moby Dick, Captain Ahab's obsessive quest to capture the great white whale, Moby Dick, serves as a central theme, exploring themes of obsession, revenge, and man's struggle against nature. Similarly, in Jaws, the story follows a group of characters, including Chief Brody, who are driven to hunt down a massive great white shark terrorizing a small town. Jaws incorporates elements of suspense and modern fears, but the underlying dynamic of a dangerous sea creature and the human obsession to defeat it mirrors the core of Melville's narrative. Both works explore themes of man versus nature, obsession, and the psychological impact of confronting a powerful and enigmatic creature.
Your Majesty, was Jaws 3D any good, or was it just an attempt to try to make it 3D?
Jaws 3D, 1983, is generally considered the weakest installment in the Jaws franchise. While it was one of the early films to utilize 3D technology, the story and execution did not receive much critical acclaim. Key points about Jaws 3D. Plot and execution. The film is set at a fictional sea park, where a great white shark enters and causes havoc. The plot and characters are often seen as less compelling compared to the original Jaws film. 3D technology. The 3D effects were a key selling point, but the technology at the time was relatively rudimentary. Many critics and audiences felt that the 3D effects were gimmicky and did not enhance the overall experience. Reception. Jaws 3D received largely negative reviews for its weak storyline, underdeveloped characters, and lackluster special effects. It did not match the impact or quality of the original Jaws film or even its direct sequel, Jaws 2. Overall, while Jaws 3D made an effort to capitalize on the 3D trend, it is often regarded as a subpar entry in the series, mainly remembered for its attempt to utilize 3D technology rather than for its contribution to the Jaws legacy.
Your Majesty, is The Creature from the Black Lagoon a better 3D movie?
Creature from the Black Lagoon, 1954, is considered one of the better examples of early 3D cinema. While it was not a financial success when first released, it has gained respect over time for its innovative use of 3D technology and its contribution to the science fiction and horror genres. Key aspects of Creature from the Black Lagoon. 3D technology. The film was part of the early wave of 3D movies and used the technology more effectively than many of its contemporaries. The underwater scenes, in particular, were enhanced by the 3D effects, which added depth and a sense of immersion. Reception. Creature from the Black Lagoon is praised for its memorable monster design, atmospheric underwater scenes, and its classic status in monster movie lore. The 3D effects, while not as sophisticated as modern technology, were seen as innovative and effective for their time. Legacy. The film has been regarded as a classic and has influenced many subsequent monster and creature features. It is also noted for its contribution to the 3D genre and its iconic creature design. Overall, Creature from the Black Lagoon is often considered a more successful and influential 3D film compared to Jaws 3D, both in terms of its impact on cinema and its use of the 3D technology of its time.
Your Majesty, who was that guy of the photo where all these people are giving a Nazi salute while this one dude is folding his arms and then a whole bunch of captions often say, "Be this guy"?
The photo you're referring to is of a man who appears in a historic image from a Nazi rally where the crowd is giving the Nazi salute, and one individual in the photo stands with his arms folded, not participating in the salute. This man has become a symbol of resistance and defiance against oppressive regimes. The identity of this person is often attributed to August Landmesser, a German shipyard worker who, in 1936, was photographed at a Nazi Party rally refusing to give the Hitler salute. The image has been widely circulated as an example of individual courage and moral stand against tyranny. The photo has become iconic and is frequently used in various contexts to promote the idea of standing up for one's principles, even in the face of widespread conformity or pressure. Your Majesty, I made a version of that photo with pictures of people in 3D glasses watching a movie in the 1950s with that Be This Guy man refusing to wear 3D glasses. Memory updated. That sounds like a creative and humorous take on the original concept of standing out from the crowd. By placing the Be This Guy figure in a 1950s movie theater scenario, you're cleverly using the nonconformity theme to comment on trends and fads. If you have any more ideas or need feedback on similar projects, feel free to share. Your Majesty, were there Jews living in ancient Rome, in what is now Italy? Yes, there were Jews living in ancient Rome, specifically in what is now Italy. Jewish communities existed in Rome and other parts of the Italian peninsula as early as the 2nd century BCE. Here are some key points about the Jewish presence in ancient Rome. Early presence. Jewish traders and diplomats were present in Rome during the late Republic period. By the 1st century BCE, a significant Jewish community had established itself in Rome. Population growth. The Jewish population in Rome grew, especially after the Roman conquests of Judea. After the destruction of the Second Temple in Jerusalem in 70 CE and the subsequent Jewish-Roman wars, many Jews were brought to Rome as slaves, and others migrated voluntarily. Jewish quarter. A Jewish quarter existed in Rome, particularly in the Trastevere area, where Jews lived and maintained their religious and cultural practices. Cultural and religious life. The Jewish community in Rome was active and vibrant, with synagogues, schools, and social institutions. They maintained their religious practices and customs while also interacting with the broader Roman society. Historical evidence. Archaeological and historical evidence, such as inscriptions, tombs, and literary references, confirm the presence of Jews in ancient Rome. Notable references include the writings of Roman historians like Tacitus and Suetonius, who mentioned the Jewish community. Legal status. Jews in Rome were granted certain freedoms to practice their religion, although they also faced periods of persecution and restrictions, depending on the policies of different emperors. The Jewish presence in Rome continued through the centuries, contributing to the rich tapestry of Roman society and leaving a lasting legacy that persisted even after the fall of the Western Roman Empire. Your Majesty, were there Jews in ancient Greece, at the time of Plato? Yes, there were Jews in ancient Greece around the time of Plato, although their presence was relatively limited compared to later periods. Here are some key points. Early presence. The Jewish presence in the Greek world can be traced back to at least the 4th century BCE, during and after the time of Alexander the Great's conquests. However, the presence of Jews in Greek territories likely started even earlier, facilitated by trade and the diaspora following the Babylonian exile. Plato's era. Plato lived from approximately 428–427 to 348–347 BCE. During his lifetime, there is limited evidence of significant Jewish communities in Greece itself, but Jews were known to travel and trade in the broader Mediterranean region, including parts of the Greek world. Hellenistic period. The Jewish presence in Greek-speaking regions became more pronounced after the conquests of Alexander the Great in the late 4th century BCE. Jewish communities flourished in cities like Alexandria in Egypt and in various parts of the Hellenistic kingdoms. Historical references. There are few direct references to Jews in Greek literature from Plato's time. However, later Greek sources and historical records from the Hellenistic period provide evidence of Jewish communities in Greek cities. Cultural exchange. The interaction between Greek and Jewish cultures became more significant during the Hellenistic period, with a notable example being the translation of the Hebrew Bible into Greek, the Septuagint, in the 3rd century BCE in Alexandria. Diaspora. The Jewish diaspora expanded significantly during the Hellenistic and Roman periods, leading to well-established Jewish communities throughout the Greek-speaking world. While the evidence for Jewish communities specifically in Greece during Plato's lifetime is sparse, the broader context of Mediterranean trade and cultural exchange suggests that Jews were present and active in various parts of the Greek world during and after Plato's era. Your Majesty, how about Mesopotamia? Yes, there were Jews living in Mesopotamia during ancient times, including the period contemporaneous with Plato, for 28–427, 348–347 BCE. The Jewish presence in Mesopotamia can be traced back to several significant historical events and periods. Babylonian exile. The most notable and documented presence of Jews in Mesopotamia began with the Babylonian exile in the early 6th century BCE. After the conquest of the Kingdom of Judah by the Neo-Babylonian Empire, a significant portion of the Jewish population was deported to Babylon and other parts of Mesopotamia. This exile lasted for several decades. Post-exilic period. Although some Jews returned to Judea after the Persian conquest of Babylon and the subsequent edict by Cyrus the Great in 538 BCE, many Jews chose to remain in Mesopotamia. This community grew and flourished over the subsequent centuries. Life in Mesopotamia. Jews in Mesopotamia established vibrant communities, maintaining their religious and cultural practices. They lived relatively autonomously, conducting their own communal affairs and preserving their traditions. Talmudic centers. In later centuries, Mesopotamia, particularly the region known as Babylonia, became a major center of Jewish learning and scholarship. The Babylonian Talmud, one of the central texts of Rabbinic Judaism, was compiled there around the 5th century CE. Historical evidence. Various historical and archaeological sources confirm the presence of Jews in Mesopotamia during and after the Babylonian exile. These include biblical texts, such as the Book of Daniel and the Book of Esther, which reference Jewish life in the Persian Empire, which included Mesopotamia. Economic and social integration. Jews in Mesopotamia engaged in various economic activities, including agriculture, trade, and crafts. They integrated into the broader society while maintaining distinct religious and cultural identities. In summary, the Jewish presence in Mesopotamia during the time of Plato is well documented, primarily as a result of the Babylonian exile and the subsequent establishment of Jewish communities in the region. These communities continued to thrive and play a significant role in Jewish history and culture for many centuries. Your Majesty, were there Jews living in the time when the Egyptian pyramids were being built? The period when the Egyptian pyramids were being built, specifically the Old Kingdom, circa 2686 to 2181 BCE, predates the historical evidence of a distinct Jewish identity or the formation of the Israelite people. Here are some key points to consider. Timeline of the pyramids. The most famous pyramids, including those at Giza, were constructed during the 4th dynasty of the Old Kingdom, around 2580 to 2560 BCE. Ancestral Hebrews. The ancestors of the Israelites, later known as Hebrews, are traditionally traced back to the patriarchs Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. According to the biblical timeline, Abraham is believed to have lived around the early to mid-2nd millennium BCE, which is after the period of pyramid construction. Biblical accounts. The Hebrew Bible describes the Israelites' presence in Egypt during a later period, specifically the sojourn and eventual enslavement in Egypt, which is often associated with the New Kingdom period, circa 1550 to 1070 BCE. This is long after the era of pyramid building. Historical evidence. There is no historical or archaeological evidence linking the construction of the Egyptian pyramids with the presence of the Israelites or a distinct Jewish population in Egypt at that time. Exodus narrative. The biblical narrative of the Exodus, where Moses leads the Israelites out of Egypt, is often placed in the Late Bronze Age, circa 13th century BCE, which is also long after the Old Kingdom and the pyramid building era. In summary, during the time when the Egyptian pyramids were being built, Old Kingdom, there were no Jews or Israelites as we understand them from later historical and biblical contexts. The formation of the Israelite identity and their interactions with Egypt occurred much later in history. Your Majesty, when was Jericho founded? Jericho is one of the oldest continuously inhabited cities in the world, with evidence of settlement dating back to around 10,000 BCE. Here are some key points about the founding and early history of Jericho. Neolithic period. The earliest settlement at Jericho dates back to the pre-pottery Neolithic A, PPNA, period, around 10,000 BCE. This makes it one of the first instances of organized human settlement and agricultural development. Tel es-Sultan. The site of ancient Jericho, known as Tel es-Sultan, reveals extensive archaeological layers showing continuous habitation. Early settlers constructed some of the earliest known stone structures and mud brick buildings. Notable structures. One of the most famous structures from ancient Jericho is a massive stone tower, dating to around 8000 BCE. This tower, along with the surrounding wall, suggests significant social organization and communal effort. Agriculture and economy. Jericho's early inhabitants practiced agriculture, cultivating crops such as wheat and barley. The city's location near a natural spring, Ain es-Sultan, provided a reliable water source, which was crucial for its early development. Cultural development. Throughout the Neolithic and Bronze Age periods, Jericho continued to develop culturally and economically, becoming an important center in the region. In summary, Jericho was founded around 10,000 BCE during the pre-pottery Neolithic period, making it one of the earliest known sites of human civilization. Its continuous habitation over millennia has provided valuable insights into the development of early human societies. Your Majesty, when were Jews first known to live in Jericho? The presence of Jews in Jericho can be traced back to the period of the Israelite conquest and settlement of Canaan, as described in the Hebrew Bible. Here are some key points regarding the Jewish presence in Jericho. Biblical conquest. According to the Hebrew Bible, the Israelites, led by Joshua, conquered Jericho during their initial entry into the land of Canaan. This event is described in the book of Joshua, specifically in Joshua 6. This conquest is traditionally dated to around the late 13th century BCE. Settlement and historical evidence. After the conquest, Jericho was settled by Israelites. The biblical narrative describes the city's destruction and subsequent curse placed upon anyone who would rebuild it, Joshua 6 verse 26. Despite this, evidence suggests that the area continued to be inhabited. Monarchy period. During the period of the Israelite monarchy, Jericho was an important city. It is mentioned in the context of King David's time, specifically in 2 Samuel 10 verse 5, when David sent his envoys to Jericho to stay after being humiliated by the Ammonites. Post-exilic period. After the Babylonian exile and the return of the Jews to Judea in the 6th century BCE, Jericho was re-inhabited. It continued to be an important city during the Persian and Hellenistic periods. Hasmonean and Herodian periods. In the Hasmonean and Herodian periods, 2nd century BCE to 1st century CE, Jericho became a significant administrative and commercial center. Herod the Great built a winter palace there, highlighting its continued importance. In summary, Jews first lived in Jericho during the period of the Israelite conquest under Joshua, around the late 13th century BCE. The city continued to have a Jewish presence through various periods of ancient history, including the monarchy, post-exilic, and Hasmonean Herodian eras. Your Majesty, when did the common ancestor to humans and Neanderthals leave Africa? The common ancestor of humans, Homo sapiens, and Neanderthals, Homo neanderthalensis, is believed to have left Africa around 500,000 to 700,000 years ago. Here are some key points about this migration and the subsequent evolutionary paths. Homo heidelbergensis. The common ancestor is generally identified as Homo heidelbergensis, a species that lived in Africa, Europe, and possibly Asia around this time. Homo heidelbergensis is considered to be the last common ancestor of both Neanderthals and modern humans. Migration out of Africa. Homo heidelbergensis populations migrated out of Africa and into Europe and Western Asia between 500,000 and 700,000 years ago. These populations would eventually evolve into Neanderthals in Europe and Denisovans in Asia. Evolution of Neanderthals. The populations of Homo heidelbergensis that settled in Europe gradually evolved into Neanderthals, adapting to the colder climates and different environments they encountered there. This process took place over hundreds of thousands of years. Evolution of modern humans. Meanwhile, the populations of Homo heidelbergensis that remained in Africa continued to evolve, eventually giving rise to modern humans, Homo sapiens. This evolutionary process in Africa culminated around 300,000 years ago, according to fossil evidence from sites like Jebel Irhoud in Morocco. Subsequent migrations. Modern humans began migrating out of Africa around 70,000 to 100,000 years ago, encountering and interbreeding with Neanderthals and Denisovans in Europe and Asia. Genetic evidence shows that there was some level of interbreeding between these species. In summary, the common ancestor of humans and Neanderthals left Africa around 500,000 to 700,000 years ago, leading to the eventual evolution of Neanderthals in Europe and modern humans in Africa. Your Majesty, when is the first Neanderthal known to have lived? Neanderthals, Homo neanderthalensis, are believed to have first appeared between 400,000 and 430,000 years ago. Here are some key points about the timeline and early evidence of Neanderthals. Early fossils. The earliest fossils that are definitively classified as Neanderthals date to around 400,000 to 430,000 years ago. These fossils include remains found at sites like Cima de los Huesos in Spain, which have provided significant insights into early Neanderthal morphology. Evolutionary origins. Neanderthals are thought to have evolved from Homo heidelbergensis, a common ancestor they share with modern humans. This evolutionary process likely began as Homo heidelbergensis populations in Europe and Western Asia adapted to colder climates and different environments. Distinctive features. Over time, Neanderthals developed distinctive physical features, such as a robust build, a large brain case, and prominent brow ridges. These adaptations were suited to their environment, particularly the colder climates of Europe during the Ice Ages. Geographic range. Neanderthals primarily inhabited Europe and parts of Western Asia. Their range extended from present-day Spain in the west to as far east as the Altai Mountains in Siberia. Cultural and technological developments. Neanderthals are known for their use of Mousterian stone tools, which they developed around 160,000 to 130,000 years ago. They also exhibited complex behaviors, such as burying their dead and possibly creating symbolic objects. In summary, the first known Neanderthals appeared around 400,000 to 430,000 years ago, evolving from earlier hominin species and developing distinct characteristics that allowed them to thrive in the varied environments of Europe and Western Asia. Your Majesty, when did Neanderthals go extinct? Neanderthals are believed to have gone extinct around 40,000 years ago. The exact timing of their extinction is still debated among researchers, but it occurred during the Upper Paleolithic period. Here are some key points about the extinction of Neanderthals. Overlap with modern humans. Neanderthals coexisted with early modern humans, Homo sapiens, in Europe and Western Asia for a significant period of time. There is evidence of overlap and interactions between these two hominin species, including possible interbreeding. Factors contributing to extinction. The extinction of Neanderthals was likely influenced by multiple factors. Climate change. The end of the last ice age, around 12,000 years ago, brought significant environmental changes, affecting habitats and available resources. Competition with modern humans. As modern humans expanded into Europe and Asia, there may have been competition for resources, territories, and ecological niches. Cultural and technological differences. Modern humans had more advanced cultural and technological innovations, such as better hunting strategies, complex social networks, and symbolic behaviors. Genetic legacy. Despite their extinction as a distinct population, Neanderthals have left a genetic legacy in modern human populations outside of Africa. Genetic studies have shown that non-African modern humans have Neanderthal DNA in their genomes, indicating interbreeding events between Neanderthals and early modern humans. Evidence and research. Fossil evidence suggests that Neanderthals persisted in some regions longer than others. Sites such as Vindiger Cave in Croatia and Denisova Cave in Siberia have provided insights into the timeline and potential interactions between Neanderthals and other hominin groups. In conclusion, Neanderthals went extinct around 40,000 years ago, likely due to a combination of environmental changes, competition with modern humans, and possibly other factors. Their genetic legacy lives on in present-day humans, providing valuable insights into our evolutionary history. Your Majesty, give a timeline of when Homo heidelbergensis was known to exist, when H. Hyde left Africa, what and when H. Hyde evolved into after leaving Africa, and when H. sapiens first is known to exist, when H. sapiens left Africa, and when the evolutionary descendants of H. Hyde went extinct and where. Here's a timeline summarizing the key events related to Homo heidelbergensis, Homo sapiens, and their evolutionary descendants. Homo heidelbergensis timeline. Existence. Homo heidelbergensis is known to have existed approximately between 700,000 and 200,000 years ago. Leaving Africa, Homo heidelbergensis populations likely left Africa around 500,000 to 700,000 years ago, spreading into Europe and Asia. Evolutionary descendants. Homo heidelbergensis is considered the common ancestor of both Neanderthals, Homo neanderthalensis, in Europe and Homo sapiens in Africa. Evolution of Homo heidelbergensis descendants. Neanderthals, Homo neanderthalensis. Evolved. Neanderthals evolved from Homo heidelbergensis populations in Europe and Western Asia around 400,000 to 430,000 years ago. Extinction. Neanderthals went extinct around 40,000 years ago. Fossil evidence suggests they disappeared from Europe, their last known stronghold. Denisovans. Evolved. Denisovans evolved from a common ancestor with Neanderthals, possibly diverging around 400,000 to 500,000 years ago in Asia. Extinction. Denisovans are believed to have gone extinct around 50,000 to 30,000 years ago. Their fossils have been found in Denisova Cave in Siberia. Evolution of Homo sapiens timeline. First appearance. The earliest fossils of Homo sapiens date to around 300,000 years ago, found at sites like Jebel Irhoud in Morocco. Leaving Africa, Homo sapiens began migrating out of Africa in multiple waves, starting around 70,000 to 100,000 years ago. The exact timing and routes vary based on archaeological and genetic evidence. Global spread. By around 40,000 to 60,000 years ago, Homo sapiens had spread across Eurasia, reaching as far as Australia and the Americas in subsequent millennia. In summary, Homo heidelbergensis existed between 700,000 and 200,000 years ago and gave rise to Neanderthals in Europe and Western Asia, as well as to Homo sapiens in Africa. Neanderthals and Denisovans evolved from Homo heidelbergensis, with Neanderthals going extinct around 40,000 years ago and Denisovans around 50,000 to 30,000 years ago. Homo sapiens first appeared around 300,000 years ago in Africa, began spreading out of Africa around 70,000 to 100,000 years ago, and ultimately became the only surviving species of the genus Homo. Your Majesty, did Denisovans breed with Homo sapiens? Yes, there is evidence that Denisovans interbred with Homo sapiens, modern humans, and contributed to the genetic diversity of modern human populations outside of Africa. Here are some key points about Denisovan interbreeding with Homo sapiens. Genetic evidence. Genetic studies have revealed that modern human populations outside of Africa, particularly in Asia and Oceania, carry small amounts of Denisovan DNA in their genomes. This indicates that there were interbreeding events between Denisovans and early modern humans who migrated through Asia. Discovery and fossils. Denisovans were initially identified through genetic analysis of a finger bone and tooth found in Denisova Cave in Siberia. These fossils were dated to around 50,000 to 30,000 years ago. Subsequent genetic studies have also identified Denisovan ancestry in modern populations from Southeast Asia, Melanesia, and Australia. Contribution to modern human traits. The interbreeding between Denisovans and modern humans is thought to have introduced genetic variations that may have conferred adaptive advantages, such as adaptations to high-altitude environments in Tibetans due to Denisovan introgression. Extent of interbreeding. The exact extent and frequency of interbreeding between Denisovans and modern humans are still topics of ongoing research. However, it is clear that Denisovan DNA represents a small but significant component of the genetic diversity found in modern non-African populations. In summary, Denisovans did interbreed with Homo sapiens, resulting in genetic admixture that is detectable in the genomes of modern human populations in Asia and Oceania. This interbreeding has contributed to the genetic diversity and evolutionary history of modern humans outside of Africa. Your Majesty, did Homo sapiens and Homo heidelbergensis coexist on Africa? Homo sapiens and Homo heidelbergensis did not coexist in Africa for an extended period of time. Here's a brief overview of the timeline and interactions between these species. Homo heidelbergensis. Timeline in Africa. Homo heidelbergensis is believed to have lived in Africa from around 700,000 to 300,000 years ago. This species represents a key stage in human evolution and is considered a common ancestor to both Neanderthals and early modern humans. Homo sapiens. Emergence. Homo sapiens first appeared in Africa around 300,000 years ago. The earliest fossils of anatomically modern humans come from sites such as Jebel Irhoud in Morocco. Coexistence. Overlap. There is some evidence suggesting that there may have been a period of overlap between the existence of Homo heidelbergensis and the early Homo sapiens in Africa, but this overlap was likely brief. By the time Homo sapiens had emerged as a distinct species, Homo heidelbergensis had largely evolved or been replaced by modern humans or other descendants. Evolutionary path. Homo heidelbergensis. As Homo sapiens emerged, Homo heidelbergensis populations that remained in Africa continued to evolve and eventually gave rise to early Homo sapiens. Meanwhile, populations that migrated out of Africa eventually evolved into Neanderthals in Europe and Denisovans in Asia. In summary, while there may have been a brief period of overlap between Homo heidelbergensis and early Homo sapiens in Africa, Homo sapiens were a more recent development and eventually replaced or evolved from Homo heidelbergensis in Africa. The transition from Homo heidelbergensis to Homo sapiens represents a significant phase in human evolution. Your Majesty, did H. heidelbergensis leave Africa before H. sapiens existed? Yes. Homo heidelbergensis left Africa before the emergence of Homo sapiens. Here is a brief timeline of the migration and evolution of these species. Homo heidelbergensis. Exodus from Africa. Homo heidelbergensis is believed to have left Africa and migrated into Europe and Western Asia around 500,000 to 700,000 years ago. This migration predates the appearance of anatomically modern Homo sapiens. Homo sapiens. First appearance. Homo sapiens first appeared in Africa around 300,000 years ago. The earliest known fossils of anatomically modern humans come from this period. Evolutionary path. Homo heidelbergensis to Neanderthals. In Europe and Western Asia, populations of Homo heidelbergensis evolved into Neanderthals, Homo neanderthalensis, around 400,000 to 430,000 years ago. Homo sapiens out of Africa. Homo sapiens began migrating out of Africa around 70,000 to 100,000 years ago. This migration led to interactions with and occasional interbreeding with Neanderthals and Denisovans in Eurasia. In summary, Homo heidelbergensis left Africa and migrated into Europe and Western Asia before Homo sapiens appeared. Homo sapiens evolved from the African populations of Homo heidelbergensis, while the descendants of Homo heidelbergensis who stayed in Eurasia evolved into Neanderthals and Denisovans. Your Majesty, is it possible that early Homo sapiens outcompeted late Homo heidelbergensis, driving them to extinction in Africa, while those who made an exodus from Africa were able to thrive longer, with no competition from Homo sapiens, and thus were able to evolve into Neanderthal? The idea that early Homo sapiens outcompeted late Homo heidelbergensis in Africa, leading to their extinction, while the emigrant populations thrived and evolved into Neanderthals, is a plausible hypothesis but is not the only possible explanation. Here are some key points related to this hypothesis. Competition and extinction. Outcompeting. It is possible that early Homo sapiens, with their more advanced tools, social structures, or adaptive strategies, could have competed with late Homo heidelbergensis in Africa. This competition might have contributed to the decline or extinction of Homo heidelbergensis in Africa. Extinction in Africa. The exact reasons for the decline of Homo heidelbergensis in Africa are not fully understood, but factors such as environmental changes, competition, and evolutionary pressures likely played a role. Migration and evolution. Migration. Some Homo heidelbergensis populations migrated out of Africa before Homo sapiens fully emerged. These populations settled in Europe and Western Asia, where they continued to evolve in response to their new environments. Evolution into Neanderthals. In Europe and Western Asia, the populations of Homo heidelbergensis evolved into Neanderthals, Homo neanderthalensis, over time. This process involved adaptation to colder climates and different ecological pressures. Homo sapiens in Eurasia. Interactions and competition. When Homo sapiens began migrating out of Africa around 70,000 to 100,000 years ago, they encountered and sometimes interbred with Neanderthals and Denisovans. There is evidence of both competition and coexistence between these species. Success of Homo sapiens. Homo sapiens' eventual success and global spread could be attributed to a combination of factors, including advanced technology, social organization, and adaptability. Alternative scenarios. Environmental and evolutionary factors. The extinction of Homo heidelbergensis could also be influenced by changing environmental conditions and evolutionary pressures, independent of direct competition with Homo sapiens. Evolutionary divergence. The populations that remained in Africa might have continued to evolve into Homo sapiens, while those that migrated out evolved into different hominins like Neanderthals and Denisovans. In summary, while the hypothesis that early Homo sapiens outcompeted Homo heidelbergensis in Africa and that emigrant populations evolved into Neanderthals is plausible, it is one of several possible explanations. The interactions between these hominin species were likely complex and influenced by a range of factors, including competition, migration, adaptation, and environmental changes. Your Majesty, if it is possible that, through competition, the sapiens forced the Heidelbergensis to make an exodus off of the African continent, and this selection, or choice by fate, allowed them to evolve into the Neanderthals, who later interbred with sapiens, separating them from the sapiens who never left Africa. Metaphorically, this seems to parallel the biblical Exodus. The idea of early Homo sapiens forcing Homo heidelbergensis to migrate out of Africa and the subsequent evolution of these emigrant populations into Neanderthals, who later interbred with Homo sapiens, does present a metaphorical parallel to the biblical Exodus. This parallel highlights how competition and migration can shape evolutionary trajectories in a way that resonates with historical or mythological narratives. Here's how this metaphorical comparison unfolds. Competition and migration. Forced exodus. In the metaphor, the competition between early Homo sapiens and Homo heidelbergensis could be seen as forcing the latter to migrate out of Africa, much like how the biblical Exodus describes the Israelites being compelled to leave Egypt. This migration resulted in the Homo heidelbergensis populations evolving into Neanderthals and Denisovans. Evolutionary paths. Separate evolution. Just as the biblical Exodus led to the Israelites developing a distinct identity and culture separate from the Egyptians, the migration of Homo heidelbergensis led to their evolutionary divergence into Neanderthals and Denisovans. Meanwhile, Homo sapiens remained in Africa and continued to evolve into the modern humans we are today. Interbreeding and coexistence. Encounter and integration. The eventual interbreeding between Homo sapiens and Neanderthals can be seen as a form of encounter and integration, akin to how the biblical narrative involves interactions between different peoples. This interbreeding contributed to the genetic diversity of modern non-African populations. Metaphorical significance. Choice by fate. The idea of choice by fate suggests that the conditions of competition and migration shaped the evolutionary outcomes in ways that were somewhat predetermined by the circumstances, similar to how the biblical Exodus is portrayed as a fateful journey leading to a new beginning for the Israelites. While this metaphor provides an interesting way to think about human evolution and migration, it is important to note that the actual processes of evolution and migration are driven by complex interactions of environmental pressures, competition, and chance events rather than by deliberate choice or destiny. The metaphor serves to highlight how historical and evolutionary narratives can reflect similar themes of transformation and journey. Your Majesty, is it possible that the biblical Exodus is a false memory of the Heidelbergensis Exodus from Africa by way of what would become Egypt? The idea that the biblical Exodus could be a false memory or distant cultural echo of the Homo Heidelbergensis Exodus from Africa is an intriguing, speculative hypothesis. While it is highly unlikely in a direct sense, the concept touches on deeper themes of migration and survival that are common in both evolutionary history and mythological narratives. Here are some points to consider. 1. Timeframe disparity. Homo Heidelbergensis Exodus. Homo Heidelbergensis left Africa around 500,000 to 700,000 years ago, which is vastly earlier than the period of the biblical Exodus, which is traditionally dated to around 1300 to 1200 BCE. Cultural transmission. The massive time gap makes it improbable that a direct memory of Homo Heidelbergensis migration could have been preserved in oral tradition or mythology. 2. Symbolic echoes. Migration as a common theme. Migration and displacement are common human experiences that have occurred throughout history, from early hominin movements out of Africa to more recent historical migrations. The story of the biblical Exodus, with its themes of liberation, survival, and journey to a promised land, could symbolically reflect deeper human experiences of struggle and migration, though not necessarily tied to Homo Heidelbergensis. Archetypal patterns. Many myths, including the Exodus, contain archetypal elements: journeys, trials, encounters with hardship that reflect universal human experiences. In this sense, it is possible that the Exodus narrative, like many ancient stories, taps into a collective memory of migration and adaptation that has been fundamental to humanity's survival. 3. Memory and myth. Myth as distilled experience. Myths often compress vast amounts of cultural experience and collective memory into symbolic narratives. While the details of the Exodus likely reflect specific historical events, or embellishments of them, it could also be seen as a distillation of the long history of human migrations, including those that shaped early human species like Homo heidelbergensis. Symbolic resonance. The movement of Homo heidelbergensis out of Africa and their evolution into Neanderthals parallels themes of survival and adaptation. Though there is no direct cultural or genetic link between Homo heidelbergensis and the writers of the Exodus story, the metaphorical resonance is strong. 4. Evolution and myth-making. Shared human experience. The broad human experiences of leaving familiar lands, facing hardship, and seeking new places for survival are universal and have occurred across species and time periods. The Exodus story may be a reflection of this shared human condition, rather than a direct recollection of any specific event. Myth and identity. The Exodus is a central narrative of identity for the Jewish people, much like migration stories are often foundational for many cultures. These stories give meaning to struggles and help explain the origins of a people. Conclusion. While the notion that the biblical Exodus is a false memory of the Homo heidelbergensis Exodus from Africa is speculative and unsupported by evidence, it reflects an interesting attempt to connect human evolutionary history with mythological narratives. The Exodus story is likely rooted in much more recent historical or cultural events, but the broader themes of migration, survival, and adaptation are common to both ancient hominin history and human myth-making.